Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation, of the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. Just a quick couple of announcements. First of all, Bookmap is requiring everyone that wants to participate in Bookmap Discord to get verified. So if you want to participate in Bookmap Discord, that's a great resource. You will need to verify. You can scan the QR code, go to this link. You'll need to enter your email address that you have entered at bookmap.com, and then follow the instructions. You'll need to enter a code, and then you're fully verified, and you can fully participate in all the channels and streams in Bookmap Discord. All right, next announcement. Last week, Bruce posted a new course in the Bookmap Learning Center, Supply and Demand Setups, a series of very short videos. Great information. I highly recommend it. Everyone, please take a look. It's free to everyone. All right, here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price of many stocks and futures. And that certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index. SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned to the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I'll be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, May 7th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll get to the live market. And of course, today is the FOMC day announcement and statement at 2 p.m., press conference at 2:30 p.m. So I'll stop whatever I'm doing and We'll take a look at the live market at 2 p.m. and mainly focusing on the S&P 500, ES futures, and NASDAQ NQ futures. And up to that, I will be focusing on preparation, everything we need to know before the 2 p.m. announcement. All right, let's get started. So again, today, the FOMC announcement statement comes out at 2 p.m. This is the CME Fed Watch tool showing the market's expectation for what the FOMC is going to do with rates. So the current target rate is 425 to 450 basis points. Right now, the CME Fed Watches tool is showing about a 98% chance of holding rates steady and only about a 2% chance of a quarter point rate drop. We can take a look. Let's take a quick look out further in time. So this is today. Next meeting is 18th of June. And there's a little bit higher chance of a rate cut, about 30% in June, July, and a little over 50% of a cut in July. All right, back today again, about a 98% chance that the Fed does nothing, hold rates steady. So that is widely known information. And the algos, traders will be parsing the statement and then focusing on the press conference, which will most likely be the biggest market mover. All right, so that's the big event for the week. And note there are a number of Fed speakers on Friday. All right, let's move on now to positional analysis. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And I have zoomed all the way out to the futures open yesterday afternoon. And note this huge move higher right at the open. And that's when the news came out that the U.S. and China are planning on trade talks. And apparently that is going to take place on Saturday. So big move up. And ever since then, the S&P 500 has been grinding lower, marked by a number of trend line breaks and some sharp drops. All right, so that is the general big picture for the last day, starting with the futures open yesterday evening. Note that ES did break above the upper daily expected move, then found resistance at that level. All right, let's zoom in a bit now, and we'll focus on the more current time frame. And before I do that, I do want to step back and take a look at the underlying index, SPX. And hello, IBOM, welcome, glad you're here. Glad you're looking forward to this. Looking forward to the watching the reaction to the FOMC. All right, so this is a 30-day, a 1-day, 1-year chart for SPX. Key point here, this is the April 2nd Liberation Day gap down, and then last Friday, May 2nd. SPX closed that gap, now is moving a little bit lower. And that was a huge range, right around 4,800 at the low, up to 5,700, which is proving to be resistance. So about a 9-point move higher. 900-point move higher. All right, let's take a look now at a 30-day, 1-hour chart, so we can get a closer look at the more current time frame. Here's that April 2nd, Liberation Day, gap down to 4,800. That was actually during extended overnight trading hours. back up to around 5,700. There's the 5,700 level right there, acting as resistance. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. This is based on the options market. This is based on the closing price for SPX. Weekly expected move based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. And note so far, SPX is trading within that range. So again, that's based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market. That's based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. So far, SPX trading within that both ranges. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 5,200. That's a strike with large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. And the next level up is the volatility trigger at 56.15. That has been a key level today. And that is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note that is based on Spotgamma's older model. And we'll take a look at some tools available using the newer model that shows that the gamma, market makers' gamma notional is still negative. And note that level did shift down a little bit from yesterday. All right, next level up is the call wall at 5,800. That's a strike with large net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. And then finally, the absolute gamma strike is at 6,000. That is a strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. So the only level that shifted for SPX was the volatility trigger shifting lower, and for SPY, the volatility trigger and put wall shifted lower, and the call wall shifted higher. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a look at a 1-minute chart so we can get a closer look at the levels in play for today. Key level for today, volatility trigger at 56.15. That did act as support around that level, acted as support earlier today. And I believe this drop was related to the Apple and Google news. If we have time, we can take a quick look at those charts. If you're not aware that Eddie Q, I believe, was with Apple, was testifying before Congress and mentioned that they were considering using AI in their browser for search. I guess they're using, must be using Google search now. So anyway, that caused a sharp drop in Google, especially, and Apple, and that drove the market lower. Now, SPX did trade back up to that level and then dropping down again. Let's take a quick look at SPY, then we'll get to Bookmap. So the SPY 560 volatility trigger is pretty close to the SPX 56.15 volatility trigger, and that has also been a key level today. Price trading above and below. All right, back to Bookmap. So again, big picture, huge move higher overnight, and then gradually moving lower. And I would say the price action really characterized by a number of trend breaks and some sharp drops. Looks like it may be doing it again. Here's that 56.15 volatility trigger. Again, around that level, and the SPY 560 volatility trigger just above that, around that level, acting as support. Ultimate support today so far has been the SPX 5600 level. So on this chart, I have key SPX levels, key SPY levels, and also key ES levels like the 5650. And note there is a difference in price between ES and SPX, and today it is somewhere between 19 and 20, and I'm actually using 19.5. So I'm showing the SPX 5600 level at ES 5619.5. And let me clean up just a little bit of this. So I'm just drawing trend lines and then rectangles around support and resistance levels. So this is just showing that the SPY 562 level has been the most recent resistance. And it looks like another uptrend may be forming here. All right, so that's the S&P 500. We've taken a look at the levels and the structure. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. So this is the NQ Futures and Bookmap, and here I've just focused on the regular trading hours, 9:30 cash open. Let's take a quick look at the underlying index charts, then we'll get back to this chart. First of all, QQQ. All right, so key level resistance at the 484 volatility trigger. And then below that, there's a combo level at 480.1, and then the zero gamma level at 480. So around that level, acting as support. So those are those two levels really bounding the price action, regular trading hours. Price action for QQQ. Let's take a look at NDX. And there are no spot gamma levels in play, at least according to this chart. And that is that's the case. So there's the QQQ 484 volatility trigger resistance level, and then around the 480, a large gamma 2 zero gamma level, and then a combo 4 level, just above that, around that level, acting as support. And of course, the big drop with the Apple and Google news. All right, let's wrap up positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. I'm going to start with market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day. This is based on the older model, but it gives us a reference point. So this is gamma notional market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day for the S&P 500, NASDAQ, Russell 2000, Note the SPX very mildly negative, and then more very mildly positive, and then more negative for SPY, and then pretty much neutral for NDX, QQQ, and then also very negative for IWM. All these numbers did move lower from yesterday, so less positive or more negative. All right, so that's based on the older model. Let's take a quick look at the newer model. This is showing SPX, and this is showing total gamma for SPX, market maker's position, peak negative gamma right here at about 5740. That's right there, positive gamma. Here, up above, 6,200. And this is that 5,500 strike that I mentioned, the same on Monday. SPY, similar picture. Peak negative gamma at 548. That's the high volatility point again, peak negative gamma. All right, let's take a real-time look at gamma now. This is the trace tool. It's available to Spotgamma subscribers. And what this chart is showing is market maker's gamma position. Red shading indicates negative gamma. In negative gamma, we're looking for faster movement, more trending market, instead of positive gamma, which would be in the blue shading. In that case, we would be looking for more mean reverting price action, but clearly very red, negative gamma shading, except for this pocket, right? Pocket of positive gamma. Let's see where that is. Oops. Right around 54, 55. All right, so based on this, I was looking for more moderate volatility in the morning and then higher volatility depending on the reaction to both the FOMC announcement and press conference after 2 p.m. All right, let's take a look and see what options traders have been doing today. So I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the S&P 500 index hero signal. So what this chart is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components, which is SPX, SPY, XSP, and ES futures. And there's another, and on this chart, the white line is price for SPX, and the purple line is the hero signal, combining puts and calls. And the directional line indicates options delta. So a rising hero signal indicates traders are buying calls and or selling puts, positive delta positions, and market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and so they have to buy futures to hedge their delta exposure. And then a falling hero signal indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They are buying puts and or selling calls. Market makers, again, take the opposite side of the trades, and they have to hedge their delta exposure by selling ES futures. And the other signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500 is the S&P equity signal. The S&P 500 equity signal is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. Typically, the index signal is a little bit smoother, indicating overall price trend, and the index signal is a little bit more noisy, but signals turning points often more clearly. And that was certainly the case right before that big drop when the Apple and Google news came out. Note the hero signal was already moving lower before 10:30, before price dropped. setting up a very nice short there, leading indicator for a short. Let's take a look at equities. And that was the same case with the equity signal, which actually started to move lower a little bit after 10:30, setting up that short. Let's go back to the S&P 500 index signal. Oops. Note these peak patterns as well, often a reliable reversal signal. So here, Hero made equal high while price moved higher, and then made a much lower low, and price dropped as traders were buying puts and selling calls in the index components. All right, let's take a look at NASDAQ. Also trending lower. So what this chart is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity for NDX and QQQ, the underlying index components for the NASDAQ. And after 10:30, setting up very good signals for the NASDAQ. And then finally, we can, for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, we can take a look at the Mag 7. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the Mag 7 stocks, Magnificent 7 stocks, Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the S&P 500, zoom in on this, get ready for the 2 p.m. announcement. And I'm going to open up another browser window here. And at first, I'm going to focus on the S&P 500, focus primarily on the S&P 500. So I will be able to keep zoomed in both the S&P 500 index and equity signals in separate browser tabs. All right, so let's go to equities, zoom in on this. So now we can go between tabs. All right, on another computer, I'm going to open up a little YouTube TV window here so I can watch CNBC and watch the feed. All right, I've got about 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions, comments? All right, back to the S&P 500. So we saw that most recent price drop with the hero signal leading price lower. So just another trend break, drop lower. All right, so the market widely expects the Fed to hold rates steady. So the algos will parse the statement, look for any differences, any changes, and then the big movement probably will not happen until the press conference. So we'll keep an eye on this, zoom in a little bit more. All right, I've got about 30 seconds. And price for the S&P 500 now trading below the volatility triggers for SPY and SPX. All right, the announcement is out. So far, not a lot of movement. And of course, as expected, the Fed leaves the Fed funds rate unchanged. So now the algos are parsing the statement. And just in the last minute or so, the volatility triggers acting as resistance. All right, let's see how options traders are reacting. So we're on the index signal. Looked like just before the announcement, traders were taking positive delta positions. Now so far flat. Let's check the equity signal. Fed sees further increase in uncertainty around economic outlook. Equity signal moving a little higher. Back to the index signal. All right, let's go back to Bookmap. All right, so price is breaking out, has broken out above the volatility triggers. The light blue line on the subchart shows that large traders were fading this move down. They were buying as price moved down. Now they've started selling. That's shown by the light blue line on the subchart. And buy stop orders have been fueling the move higher. That's shown by the rising yellow line. That's part of the MBO bundle. And so far, not a lot of movement. There was certainly much more movement with the Apple and Google news. Now down below the volatility triggers. Let's check back. Let's see what options traders are doing. Back to Hero. Now the index signal turning lower. Equity signal also turning lower. Back to Bookmap. Fed is attentive to risk on both sides of dual mandate. Let's zoom out. So compared with the rest of the day, so far not a lot of movement. And that is not necessarily typical of a Fed day. Much more extreme price movement after the Apple Google news. All right, let's zoom back in. Back to Hero. All right, so the equity signal continues to move lower. Same for the index signal. All right, back to Bookmap. Let's check NASDAQ. NASDAQ making a series of lower highs. Now it's testing the 480 level in NQ 19,800. All right, so ES back to lows of the day, the 5,600 level, and breaking lower. Let's check Hero again, see what options traders have been doing. And the Hero signal for S&P 500 index and equities, both moving lower. Let's go back to Bookmap, see what's down below here. So down below the SPY 555 large gamma 4 level, and then also the Spotgamma implied one-day move low. And that's at 55.78, which 0.2, which would be around the ES 55.97.98 level. So that would be right around the ES lower weekly expected move, just a little bit above that, maybe around the SPY 556 level. All right, so again, ES trading trading down lows of the day, down to the heading toward the lower weekly expected move. Looks like it's just right above the Spotgamma implied one-day move low. Let's go back and check Hero. And there's this level that I'm talking about. Both the index and equity signals continue to move lower. So it looks like that implied one-day move low. Price did trade down to that level and maybe acting as support. Remember, that would be right around 55.97.98. Right around here. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, now some NDX levels in play. Here's the 640 volatility trigger, 19,640 level, and then the 619 zero gamma level just below that. Let's see what's down below. Yeah, I don't see any more spot gamma levels. Let's do a quick check of the index charts. Oops, chart. Go back to NDX. So there's the zero gamma level and the volatility trigger levels. So far, maybe acting as support. Definitely a nice price target for that move down. Trend break, series of lower highs down to your targets at the zero gamma level and volatility trigger levels. Check QQQ. And I believe the next gamma level, spot gamma level below for QQQ may be way down the 450 put wall. All right, back to Bookmap. Let's go back to ES. And let's go back to Hero. So far that implied one-day move low, holding as support. Let's check the equity signal. All right, anyone have any questions, comments? All right, so far the support at the spot gamma implied one-day move low is holding. iBomb says, great job. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. All right, so the S&P 500 break from the volatility triggers down to the implied one-day move low. Check NASDAQ. So far, the NDX level is holding the zero gamma level. Let's go back and check Hero. All right, so now the equity signals may be starting to turn down again. Same for the index signal. So we'll see if that implied one-day move low holds as support. I'm going to add that on my chart so we can get a better visual. All right, back to Bookmap again. Hero signals starting to turn lower again. Let me refresh price line levels. All right, so now we have a reference on our Bookmap chart of that implied one-day move low. The chart. So the question is now, will that level hold as support again? Hero signal for equities continuing to move lower. Same for the index signal. Fed says quantitative tightening will continue. Let's check trace. So down at 5,500, there's a little bit of positive gamma. This is the GEX. GEX bars on the left. But the big pocket of positive gamma is right around, centered at right now 54.60. So that would be quite a way down, quite a ways down. All right, so the Spotgamma level, implied one-day move low, holding a support again. Let's go back to Hero. Index signal ticking up, but the equity signal looks like it maybe not. Back to Bookmap. Let's check NASDAQ. So for NASDAQ, still trading around the zero gamma level and volatility trigger levels. Back to ES. All right, does anyone have any questions, comments? Do you want to continue to take a look at this or look at some stocks? Let's take a quick look at some stocks. Here's Apple again in the news today. There's the big drop. Apple back down to lows of the day. Amazon. This is a nice long setup in the morning, bullish opening drive. Traders are buying calls. Let's see what options traders are doing. I'm going to open up one more browser window with Hero. Open up full screen. Go to Amazon. I'm going to shift to puts and calls. this large block order, institutional order, kind of distorts the signal, but traders were buying calls from the open, driving Amazon up to the 190 call wall key gamma strike, and then they took the foot off the gas. Sorry about that. Auto zoom. iBomb wants to take a look at Google. Sure, we'll take a look at Google next. All right, so Amazon bullish opening drive, and then a call peak pattern. Call buyers took their foot off the gas, and Amazon consolidated, moved a little bit lower. All right, Google. So there's the reaction to the news in Google. So you can see before the news came out, price and hero signal pretty flat. Full alert comes in, and then a very bearish momentum pattern as traders sell calls and buy puts. And Google drops down to the 150 put wall. Let's go take a look at that in Bookmap. That's a huge move for Google. Google, I'm not sure what the ATR is for Google, but that is certainly a big move. Let's check on that. So for Google, the ATR is 5.86. And Google still trading not quite at the lows of the day. Let's check Meta. Nice long setup, bullish opening drive in the morning. All right, back to Hero. There's Google. Back to Meta. Bullish opening drive. Traders have been buying calls, continue to buy calls. As Meta tries to make its way up to the 600 call wall, key gamma strike. Last stock I wanted to take a look at is Palantir. So it had a pretty sharp drop after reporting earnings, and that was on Monday afternoon. And this morning, a very bullish opening drive as traders are buying calls, selling puts. Couple of call peak patterns, and then traders started selling calls and buying puts, and Palantir started to move back lower. So Palantir found support right around the 170 hedge wall just at the open, traded up above the 110 key gamma strike, and now trading between those two strikes. So let's take a look at that on Bookmap. There's that bullish opening drive. A lot of aggressive buyers buying shares, that's shown by the green volume dots. Took the foot off the gas around 10, and now price grinding lower. All right, let's get back to the indexes. All right, so it looks like that Spotgamma implied one-day move, low held as support for ES so far. Again, remember press conference coming up. Let's check NASDAQ. Now NASDAQ trading above those NDX levels, the 640 volatility trigger and the 0 gamma level below that. So the volatility trigger, resistance, then support. Let's go back and check Hero. Whoops. And Let's go back to the index signal. All right, key so far after the announcement, the implied one-day move low acting as support. And let's check the equity signal, and it's pretty flat. Setting up a potential divergent short. And Ryan, welcome. Glad you're here. Ask, can I show XAU US dollar? Is that gold? If that's the case, I do not have, I don't have, in Bookmap, I would not be able to show that instrument. I could show either GLD or gold futures in Bookmap. I don't have either of those up in Bookmap. So sorry about that. Wayne says, thanks for your insight. Thank you very much. Welcome, Wayne. Glad you're here, and thanks for your kind words. All right, so key for the S&P 500 after the announcement. Break below the hedge wall, actually the 5615 volatility trigger, and support at the Spotgamma implied one-day move low. Hero signal now ticking higher. Press conference begins in about 2.5 minutes. Let's check equities. Equities line still hero line pretty flat, but maybe now the index signal helping is more important, driving price higher. IBOM asked, can we try GLD and gold futures? All right, I don't have time to add either one of those instruments in Bookmap. I only have a couple of minutes left. We can take a look at GLD and Hero here. So net for the day in GLD, traders have been selling calls and buying puts. It looks like GLD may be pretty flat for the day. But again, traders taking negative delta options positions. All right, let's go back to the index signal. Which continues to tick higher. Right back to Bookmap. Remember earlier today, the 5600 level was the low for the day. So ES did trade down below that level, again down to that implied one-day move low. And now if it continues to move higher, the next test up above would be the volatility triggers at SPX 5615 and the SPY 560 volatility trigger. All right, my time is almost up. Last call for questions, comments. All right, I've got 2:30. Press conference begins, and I'm going to wrap it up now. Everyone, good luck trading this afternoon. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Monday. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. And again, have a great afternoon. Bye.